An expert cap here.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
How are you?
Oh, welcome back to Sun. Okay. Let's get straight to it. The Yom Lakot, the Malachim Meruben, the Yom is Kotze. So there's a story about Agripas that we spoke about the second day, and I just want to fill in a few of the. There was a question, and there were too many answers. I gave 6 answers. I'd have to slug up a few answers in order to narrow down the field. And there's 2 or 6 answers, too many. The time was not, we didn't have enough time then to get to any upslugs. We just barely had enough time to talk about the 6 answers. Before we start, the Rebbe had a thing that he wanted in 770 that after every Yom Tov, there should be a Kinus Torah. Again, you know, a Rebbe's ach, but the Pashtus, because the Shulchan Aruch says in Hilchos Yom Tov, Chazal say Isru Chag ba'avois makanas mizbeach, that if a person should try to make something special out of Isru Chag, and that's something very special, like he brings poros ovis u'shmeitnes al gaba mizbeach. So the Pashtus, the Rebbe in his mind was that the whole idea of a Yom Tov is a ruchnizdike thing that we take a lot of koich, especially from Chodesh Tishrei, bring it into the rest of the year through a Kinus Torah with this pilpul and there's questions and there's answers. The Rebbe always said in the Fabrengen before, like the Simchas Torah Fabrengen would always say a pilpul, and the Rebbe wanted that it should be discussed. Someone ask a shayla, and they would invite Rosh Hashivas that would come. Obviously, in the whoever was the Rosh Hashiva in 770 at the time was Rosh Medabrim. The early years it was, or it's water, it's fine. The early years it was. The early years 70 Rosh was at Agusman when I murdered the Kegon. Later years was at Rav Pekarsky, was at Oven Queens. So if Agroisa going, whatever the other Lubavitch Rabbanan used to give. Anyway, so this is the history of the Kinus Torah. That year of Toshim Ches, the Rebbe spoke a short thing, which is a kasha that L'choyre there's a stira between the story of the Gemara and the story the way it's said in the Mishnah. And the Rebbe gave 2 answers, and we spoke about it. We gave another 4 answers, and that's what I'd like to focus on right now. Let's go quickly into it. There's a Gemara Daf Mem Aleph, the Mishnah. Really, this is the whole sugya in the Shas of the mitzvah of Hakel. You don't find it in other places in the Shas. This is in Perek Zayin and Mesachas Soita. So the Mishnah says, Parshas the Melech Keitzad. How did they do the Parsha the Melech? Motzei Yom Tov Rishon Shel Chag. When it was after the first day of Chag, of Sukkot, B'Shmini, B'Metzoi Shvis, on the year 8, after year 7, which is this year. They built a Bima Shalaitz when Yoshua play and he sits on the stage. I pointed this out to a few Lubavitch Chassidim. That's Apile Dova Ploi. Those that are learning 3 Prakim Rambam. So the first day, which is Tez Zayin, the first day Cholamoid Night Fall, Tez Zayin Tishrei. The Rambam starts off about Shmitas Ksofim, and he says when the Shmitas Ksofim, the Mechukas Rishonim, the Rambam holds it's at the end, and at the end of the year, and he brings a raya from the mitzvah of Hakel that it says in the pasuk Mikei Sheva Shonim. So Lashgocha Prot is those that are learning 3 Prakim Rambam. So in the day in Eretz Yisrael, which is the day of Hakel, so the Rambam spoke about it that day. Okay, continue. Chazna Knesses, Noitel, there was a person in the base of Mikdash that was called Chazna Knesses, Noitel Secretary of Neisel, Rosh Knesses, Neisel was Gan, Neisel, Kohen Gadol, Neisel, Melech, Imid, Makabel, Bekoide, Yoshef. So they, in order for COVID, so they would give the very choshva people up to the Kohen Gadol, and the Kohen Gadol would hand over the Sefer Torah to the king.
I see why Israel called the government Knesset because of this.
Yeah,
Chazan Knesset.
maybe, I don't know.
Huh?
Maybe they wanted to think of the basic Knesses.
Right.
He has to stand when he takes the Torah, but when he reads, he sits. We know that Kriyas Torah has to be when you're standing. You're not supposed to do Kriyas Torah when you sit. Is it that B'chlal Melech is different? Is it Hakel is different? Whatever. That's the din. That he was Yosh.
But only one part is different. Getting to read the whole Torah.
Maybe it's like a Verbringen. You have to sit down for Verbringen. No, he let quite a lot. The mission's going to say later, however, she read. He read Größer Stückliche Mishnah Torah. I don't know. Agripas HaMelech, Omad, the Kibel, Agripas stood and he was makabelet standing and he kept on standing. Instead of sitting down, the Kodim Oimed, Shagia, when he came to the pasuk of Loi Tuchalos Lachish Nachrui, Zolgain of Demos, he cried, Amruloi al Tisiora Agripas, don't be scared, Achenu Ata, Achenu Ata. They said double Achenu. It's like a strong lotion, double. The Ben Yodas Pshatum, why double? One is your and also your children. We accept you and we accept your children. The Koida Mitchila Elad Vonim Atshma, he reads from the beginning of Elad Vonim, which is Mishnah Torah and Shma Yisrael. Shma V'Hoim Shemaya. You see, this is not so little. In other words, he's reading Dvorim V'Schanan Ekim. Then he reads Shma V'Hoim Shemaya. Asa Ta'asik Ischal Al Aser. Parshas HaMelech, Brochas HaKlos, Shegem Kol HaParsha. Broch Shegen Godel Mevarches HaMelech Mevarches. Ela Shenoisen Shel Regolem Tachas Mechilas Ha'avad. All together. Okay, let's turn the page because there's a little shtick on the Gemara. We actually did it 7 years ago. Who remembers from 7 years? But I want to just get moving on the sugya.
You also do it every year.
You also do it every year. You do it for all of us. Hamelach Omed Makabel, the Koira Yoshev, Agripas Hamelach Omad, the Kibel. It's the next page. The Koira Omed, like 5 lines from the top. Omed Machal the Yoshev. Lifna Hashem. So anyway, the only people that could sit is the descendants of David HaMelech. We're talking about over here was Ezes Noshim, so it was really mutter to sit. But he decided to stand. So Gemara Shibchu the Meshavechim means he did a good thing. You can be moichel on his college. You have to have Eimah from the Melech. So the Gemara says, no, mitzvah shiny. It's different. In other words, for a mitzvah, for the cover the Eibishter, it's different. Okay. We get to that passage. Tanim Shmeid Rabbi Nosen. That they were that time the Yidden Nabach got it's a terrible that the Rahman al-Islam, the Churban Beis Hamikdash Kilu was because they flattered Agripas. The question is, why is it such a big aveda to flatter someone? That's the big deal. So Gemara is not going to go till the end to explain why it's so bad to flatter someone. You can never judge who is right and who is righteous because everyone is exaggerating and lying. Dorish Yehuda Bar Marova, Vitemer Rabbi Shimon Bepezi. You're allowed to flatter the shoyim. Mashiach will come. So a person who's a novel, a bad guy, they're not going to call him a nodiv, a generous guy. Well, the kilai, a person whose hand is closed, he never gives tzedakah. Lo yamashua, they won't say that he's a generous person. Machlal de belamazeh, shori, shem melok shem mahach, keres bnei elokim batirtzein.
So Agripas was Russia?
And we'll talk about this. About Pashtus, Agripas was a tzaddik.
Why would he Melech and reading the Torah and all this?
Oh, he wasn't a Russia. The Hadrabah will talk about it.
He said here that after that he said he's a Russia.
I hear.
Oh.
But in the Pashtus, because he was doing right now, he wasn't necessarily a Russia altogether, but right now he was doing something wrong. He was being a king, and he's not allowed to be a king. He was doing an Aveda. Probably when we say you're not allowed to be machna for Russia, it doesn't mean only a guy who's the biggest scoundrel, the mamish abal, and a person who's a nice guy. basically one of the basic things of Chanufa is that if a person is doing the wrong thing, you're not allowed to tell him he's doing the right thing.
From which Shevet he was?
He was
And we'll talk this in a
He
minute.
was a governor, but he wasn't a real melech.
We'll get.
He was from Shevet Yehuda or David?
He was.
Let's read a little more.
Governor. Like
Let's talk a little more.
A politician.
Zog the Gemara. That you see that you're allowed to flatter a Rasha because when Yaakov Avinu saw Esav, he said that seeing your face is like seeing a Malach's face. So he flattered him, but really Esav is a bad guy. So why is he flattering a bad guy like Esav? Because you're allowed to flatter a Rasha. Look at the Rebbe Levi, and this is against the Rebbe Levi. Amar Rebbe Levi. Huh?
The Malach that he fought.
Oh, well, Reb Shimon Malakish has a good pshat, like you're saying. Which Malach is he talking about? Reb Shimon Malakish, Kreis will give look at Rebbe Levi. Rebbe Levi Moshe Sheyakov Esav Lamad Avadom Elodom Shizim Rechavei Veikir Boish Mavakash Lahorge Amar Loi Tam Tafshel Zeh Shani Toim Ketafshel Shetamti Beveis HaMelech. He came to someone's house to eat dinner, and he realized this guy is not some serving dinner. This guy is planning to kill him. So he says, "Ooh, this dish is so delicious. Yesterday when I had lunch with the king, it was your dish is better than his." So when the gangster hears this, he thinks, "Wait a minute. This guy eats lunch with the king. I'm not sure I want to harm this guy. This is too much for me." So Agam, it's a lie, and it's Chanufa. He's flattering him. He's saying that your lunch is so gewaldig. It's as good as the lunch coming out from the king's kitchen. So Amar Yodelei Malka Mistafi V'Lo Kotelei. So really, he's saying that he didn't chamfa, he didn't give Chanufa. He just wanted to tell him that you should know. I talked to angels. And I overpowered angels. So the Zanishim Groisa Chochem with me. That he was trying to threaten him. He was not trying to flatter him. But the other opinion holds he was trying to flatter him. The simple reading of the Gemara before we get to Meforshim is that there is really a machloikis if you're allowed to flatter a rosh or not. That's the simple reading of the. Let's continue. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Kol Adam Shesh Bei Chanufa. Maybe a person that flatters other people brings anger to the world. The
Compliment is Chanufa?
So we'll get to a minute. The Pashtus Chanufa means that a person is doing something against the Ratzon of the Eibishter. And instead of you telling him what you're doing is wrong, you're saying something to make it sound as if what he's doing is right. So Tosfos says, why is that a terrible thing? Because you're not scared from the Rabbanah Shalom. The Rabbanah Shalom says not to do it, and this guy is doing it. The Rabbanah Shalom says not to steal, and you're seeing a Ganev pickpocket someone. So instead of telling him you're not allowed to do that, you're telling him, "Ooh, good job." Good job.
So don't do it in my house.
So what are you doing? You know that the Rebbeinu Shalom says that this is a bad thing, and you're telling this guy it's a good thing. So what the Rebbeinu Shalom cares about, you don't care. To get this guy's approval, that this guy should smile to you, that you care. So that's the terrible thing of Chanuf. So like you said, nothing wrong if a person plays guitar and you tell him, "Wow, you play guitar so nice." That's not chanuf. That's not called chanuf. The strict definition of chanufa is l'choida when it's an aveda, as we see from Tosfos. And now, before we go further in the Gemara, since you're already asking about this, first of all, let's look in Tosfos. Tosfos says, "Kol hamachna l'aveda yesh lefarish shaloi b'makom sakana." B'makom sakana, if it's a sakana. If it's a sakana, but you see from you're allowed mut. If it's a sakana, it's mut. In Tosfos, it sounds that opinion that says that it's mutter holds it's mutter. The opinion that says it's asur. When is it asur? Stamazay. But if it's a sakana, it's mutter. That Perek Arben Adorim Ulo also La'ardi Yisrael Love Badei Trei bnei chuzo kom chad shachte lechavram le'lula yezav dem alei hinu porale be'shchita. Kosel kamed Rabbi Yochanan alei dilma chazama chazakte le'idei ve'averim Rabbi Yochanan after itzalta. Ula was traveling two angry guys from the chuza, and one guy takes the other guy, sliced off his head. So he says, Ula, he did a good job. He said, great job. He said, pick up his head one more time. We'll see how straight the slice was. So he came to Etisol. He asked Rabbi Yochanan, maybe he did a bad thing. Rabbi Yochanan said, Nafshecha itzalt, you're allowed to do it. And the guy was dead anyway. And this guy is an angry Meshugana. So
Question if he learned Hilchot Shchita.
no. So that's what happened. So we see from here that if it's sakona, it's mutter. A very important point, the way I see it from Tosfos, is that whoever holds it's mutter. It's always mutter. Even the one that holds it's also kol hamachnu chaveri is like the Gemara says yered begehenim. Even that opinion says that v'makom sakona it's mutter. Let's read a little.
Saving your life.
Saving your life. En l'chadav Hashem b'koach nefesh. Pashtus. Tosfos bring a raya, but l'chayda en l'chadav Hashem b'fnei b'koach nefesh. It's a davar poshet l'chayda what Tosfos is saying. So why did Tosfos have to bring him that raya? Okay, he brought a raya from the Gemara. Let's read a few more lines. Amar b'lazer kol adam shesh bechanufa afilu umrim she'im mekal nois. Shemal harosh tzadik ekaveh amim yizamei l'ume bein koi v'leklola shnem loikabe kel vein l'ume l'umrim shnem l'ume l'ume yametz. Even the women that are pregnant, the babies are cursing the people that are macham. Amar b'lazer kol adam shesh bechanufa neufel gehinim. שנאמר כל אוהב האומרים לרע טוב ולטוב לרע מקציב לכן כאכול קש לושן אש. So in other words, he's going to Gehenna. Amar v'lotzah kol hamachne l'chaveri seif neifel b'yodi. V'meinei neifel b'yodi neifel b'yad bono. Neifel b'yad ben b'noi. So it's a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing, the union of Chanufa. The Gemara goes on and on about this. We'll stop at this point. I just want to read a little piece. The Sefer Yereim from Rebbe Elazar Mimitz, which is considered one of the important svarim that are counting the mitzvahs, actually counts it as a mitzvah. It's like very funny. Not the Rambam, not anyone else, but in the Yereim, he counts this as a mitzvah. One of the Shasa Loita say is Loitachnifu, not to flatter someone. And he reads like this: Tanya b'sifrei, Harezu, the pasuk says, he's a little bit playing games here. Over there is talking about Ritzicha. But listen, this is the Yereim. He was a very important issue. So, but this is the way he reads, and he reads it from the Sifrei. Now, most of the other Rishonim probably read the Sifrei as an asmachta. He reads like this: Harezu Hazara lechanofim, Hareinu mefarish pidish chanufa shezir lavatoyre kol shemei dober avle sheini hogen leroy dober v'ayim toivu. Shoysek oy metechire loy megufe veloy memoinen le betoich rosh levava yesh choshev belevava v'aymer bero osa penyech rape olay biskoytiti me ve'enem afsek b'kititosek im chazdei ve'avosek. I guess it's probably to do with Rasha, because the guy is a Rasha.
Not always.
Probably, I don't know, because this is very strong, because he holds the Yereim holds one of the 365 mitzvah loitasa is not the chamfa. So it's like, wow. I mean, usually you think it's Medrash Chazal, and that's probably what the other Rishonim think. He thinks it's a serious. This is one of the 365 loitasa. But he explains, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean when you tell someone, you eat someone's house, and you tell that Ebbetson the best challah. I've never tasted such good challah. That's not called chanuf. I'm sorry. That's called being a good guest. That's called being a good oirach. What's oirach toiv mahu oimer, oirach ra mahu oimer. That doesn't mean anything.
For shidduch, he said, "Oh, she's a beautiful girl."
Yeah, it's good to make good to make shidduch.
Yes.
Good, but the problem with shidduch is not when you're machmir. The problem is when we lie. And the minute
same thing.
No.
She's
Chanufa.
so beautiful and she's ugly.
No.
So
Okay.
you lie, but you
Wow.
machne.
You might like that.
Exactly. So it's not even okay. Anyway, back to what he says. He says that all that's not chanufa. Chanufa is a person did something wrong. The Eibusha says not to do it, and if you're going to tell this guy a word, he's not going to hurt you. He's not going to be your friend anymore. So what are you scared? The Eibusha not being your friend, you don't care. If this guy is not going to smile to you, so what? Let him not smile to you. It's mashma from him that if the guy would even be mazik you in the smallest bit, you're allowed to be machnafim. More than Toisvus. Toisvus says, right, only by sakona. And this guy sounds if this guy's going to break your window. If you're not going to be machnafim, he's going to break your window. Okay, you're allowed to be machnafim. That's the way it sounds. And then he continues. He says, "Kedetnam besoita." Amrla altira Agripas achinu ata v'minin b'gemara b'ayis shon eschay v'sanem shesor klilu shechnif l'Agripas v'afilu b'shtikin nikrechonov. Even if you're quiet, you have to say something. You have to say something. Okay. And then he says, in general, hamashlim l'rosha mar atzma erve machmas yirosai. A person that tries to make believe he's a friend of the Rosha, and nikra Rosha. That's nothing wrong. And then he brings the Rebbe Yochanan Mazaka said, like the money Adam Shalom Apila Doibashu. Okay.
Financial harm also would be considered lose a job or whatever.
It seems that you're allowed to, yeah. As long, not only Basakona. And he continues, he brings that Reb Shimon Pez that Mutalachne l'Rishayim Be'elamazah. Ishlokish Amar from Yaakov and Esau. He says Lamadnu shemachnifun l'rosh machmas pachad shori. V'shaloi machmat pachad nikre chone b'yizor adam ma'achar she'ena goyim loy lahachnif l'rosh im rosh levada v'senes atoy v'yoshe. So it sounds from the Sefer Yereim that even if Shimon Ben says mutar lachnif l'rishayim be'elamazeh is only if it's machmas pachad, only machmas pachad. But even the one that's matir is only matir if it's machmas pachad. Not so much like Toises. Toises, it sounds that the one that's matir is matir. Once oiser depends if it's pachad or not pachad.
But Yaakov did not afraid from Esau. You see, he met three machanot. He was ready for war.
He was afraid. Right. He was afraid. Right? Okay. Okay, so let's go now to the other Tosfos. Let's go to this Tosfos. So I think Tosfos holds Pachad in Sakona. That guy's going to kill him. But this guy, it sounds like even if it's less, because he says Chanifa is metoich rosho choishe belvave ve'omer bera also pen yecher apoy alai viskoited ve'eni mafsed b'kitosakim chazde va'avoso nikre chonef. If the only thing I have to lose is loy megufay loy memamoinoi, the only thing I have to lose is that guy who's a rosho is now not going to be my friend. So then I'm not allowed to be scared of that. But if he's going to break my window, it's mashma that I could come for him. I don't want him to break my window. Okay. Okay. So now let's go to Tosfos, and then we'll go to the Sikha of the Rebbe. Let's read it quickly. The bottom Tosfos over here. Okay, so let's summarize. So we said that the reason the Jews they flattered Agripas. They flattered Agripas. Agripas was crying because really he was not supposed to be a king.
He was good.
Oh,
He was a Yid.
so let's learn Tosfos to find out who was he. A lot of Yidden never died that day because they were chanfen. Im hoyero ibnei Torah kiven im Yisrael mishum zelisa milza k'moshe pirish raishi sheschayva al chanufa moetes kazu einish gadol. Rashi says that really his mother was Jewish. Elamai, it's not b'kovedik that since his father was a ger, it's not so b'kovedik that he should be a melech. Okay, it's not b'kovedik. there was no Isser involved. So the Cham for them, for this, they got such an unbelievable punishment. If you turn back, you see that in the last few lines at Rashi, he said, Agripas melech Yisrael, he was a Jewish king, Mezarish al Hurdus. This is the person that the Beis Hamikdash destroyed in his days. So that's the story. So he says, Rashi says for a little further, he says, really his mother was Miyisrael. So if his mother Miyisrael, the way Tosfos understood Rashi is, that really was allowed to be a melech. Alamais in a chain. Okay, but for that they should get such a punishment.
So Hodos built a Bet HaMikdash, and Bayamav Shel Agripas was Nachra Bet HaMikdash.
Okay, so I want to back up and drop because a few people here missed the shir. So I'm going to go back to a few of the basic points to so everyone is on the same page. There was one of the last strong kings of the Hashmonaim. His name was Yochanan Horkanus.
Mm-hmm.
He was what we refer to as Yochanan Kohen Gadol. The guy was Kohen Gadol for many years, and then a little went sour.
When he was 80 years old.
So
Got sour.
right. So this guy was a very powerful king, and he did a lot of successful wars. And one of them was against Edom, the descendants of Esau, and he destroyed them totally. And he decided that whoever he didn't kill, he's going to convert to Judaism. And Chazal were very not happy with that conversion because it was forced conversion. Basically, it was not. Chazal didn't like it. Okay. Now he also took a lot of slaves from the people that he captured, and among them from very powerful families in Edom. From one of those families is Hurdus. The Gemara says in Baba Basra that he heard a baskel one day that kolav the morid be'oisayom matzlach, that whoever, any slave that rebels that day will be matzliach. He went and he killed all the family of Hurdus. The Gemara says besides one girl, put her into honey for 7 years. The Gemara says one opinion is because he wanted to sleep with her. One opinion is he didn't sleep with her, he just wanted to have her, whatever. And then she said that she before she committed suicide, she said that she went off. He wanted to marry her, so she committed suicide. And before she jumped off to her death, she said, "You should know that anyone that's ever going to say that they're from the family of Hashmonaim, they're lying. They're really avodim." Tosfos there says that Hurda's descendants from both sides are not Jewish; they're avodim. Tosfos also in Yevamah says that they became bnei chodim because they killed their masters. They became bnei chodim, and therefore they became chayiv b'mitzvahs. The only problem why they couldn't be kings is because they're called kahal gedim, and the pasuk says obviously a goy can't be a king. It means that even a ger can't be a king. So Tosfos says that over there, and Tosfos in Yevamos says that Hurda's father.
Why there cannot be a king? It said Ke'achicha.
But achicha means b'mitzvahs. But lagabe this, the Torah, the Gemara says that the Torah says l'suchalei ish nochri means even if he's a ger, kahal gedim, they can't be a king. Even if his father and mother both converted, doesn't matter. He can't be a king. So Tosfos there says it's talking about the father and mother of Hurdus and all his descendants, the father and mother, are all Gadim. So therefore, they're all disqualified from Makona. Rashi here obviously holds that whatever that girl screamed, so she screamed, whatever. A girl could say whatever she wants to say before she plunges to her death. But Lapoil, not true. Imam Yisrael, Rashi says she has the right to scream whatever she wants to scream when she's committing suicide. I mean, that's a simple reading in here. Maybe there's other maforshim, but I would say Rashi is going to say, well, what do you mean you can bring me the Gemara Baba Basra? She has a right as a girl to scream whatever she wants to scream. It doesn't mean that it's true. The Metzius.
Not kosher ladies.
Yeah. No, she said what she said. She could say what she said. Tosfos accepts that what she says is serious. No, she said whatever she wants to say. But Tosfos says, Imam Yisrael. Now, I'm going to a little jump ahead of myself because I'm being a gay assume, but so Hurdus Hurdus had a sister, who had so Hurdus had a son, Aristobulus, and he killed his son Aristobulus.
Yeah.
Okay, so you learned history, so you know that.
Yeah, I learned.
Aristobulus's wife was, see, he killed his son, and who was his wife? His sister's granddaughter. He had a sister who had a daughter who was married to his son. They were cousins, first cousins. So now he took the grandson, Agripas, who was 3 years old, and shipped him to Rome, that he should be raised by a Roman family, that he should grow up to be a good Roman. And he, again, the kids said, I'm sorry, I'm telling over the story that I already said.
That's beautiful.
He actually was he lived the good life in Rome, and at some point he got stuck in bad business and he lost his pants, and he ran away from Rome and he came to Alexandria in Egypt. The Jews there loved him because they felt, he's the Chor from the royal family, and they gave him a lot of money and they sent him back to Rome. At that time, Alexandria was an unbelievably powerful Jewish community. So
Where was that?
Alexandria in Egypt.
Egypt.
When he came back, he was successful. He was good friends with the royal family. That time, the king was Tiberius, and in that family, he was good friends with Caliglius. Sorry, Caliglio, it's called in English, but obviously in Roman it's Caliglius. And he once at a party announced that he would love to see Caliglius being the next king. Tiberius found out about this, and he put him in chains and locked him up. But for his good fortune that he wasn't locked up for long, Tiberius was assassinated, and Caliglio became the next king. Caliglio made a whole parade. He released his friend and gave him a chain that weighed, a gold chain that weighed as much as the metal chains that were on his hand. Okay, and then he appointed him to take over his grandfather Hurdus, that was already dead for a couple of years. Hurdus was probably the most despised king over the Jews, probably in all history. Although he built the Beis HaMikdash, and he built other things until today in Israel, it's unbelievable. But he was such an achzer, right? He was such an achzer, he can kill his own son. It's just like, how could a person, like, he was a wacko human being.
Didn't you
It's
make
great,
the-
like, an
the thing where the
unbelievable,
others are buried?
in an almost unbelievable way. But he does have a schus that he built the Beis HaMikdash in a way that's that it was unbelievable.
Beautiful.
And in the history books that it's 80 years they built, they had 180,000 workers. So the day they completed the job, they had a big problem that it's Israel called unemployment. So and that was in the days of Hurdus, the grandson. I'm sorry, Agrippas. And we'll get to that in a second. So Agrippas was appointed by his friend Caliglio as the king. And he gave him, Israel had the north, the south, the center. He gave him the north, but he didn't give him Yerushalayim, because that was like still very sore to the Romans. He did not give him Yerushalayim. And as one of the stories that happened was that Caliglio was Gutzadreit. By all the history books, he was considered the Roman crazy king.
Majnun.
Yeah. And he decided that he's Rahman al-Islam, he is an Elil, and in every temple in the world there has to be a statue of him. Obviously in Yerushalayim they were not going to put up a statue of him, and he sent a message to the head of his legions that were stationed in Syria to go forcefully and put in his statue, otherwise he should destroy Yerushalayim. So Agrippas asked this guy to take back his armies. Yosifon writes that when he marched into Eretz Yisrael, men and women lay down on the floor. They said, "Trample us before you put an avodah zarah in Yerushalayim." It's interesting to read about this because although not all the Yidden in the end of the second Beis HaMikdash were so but still you see how the idea of avodah zarah was like so that bothered them. The covet of the Beis Hamikdash. That there
ייהרג
shouldn't
ולא
be,
יעבור.
right, that there shouldn't be an avodah zarah in the Beis Hamikdash. Huh? All the Yidden became the Kurakart at that point, even
That's
the not
why-
so religious Yidden.
The first
So-
Beit Hamikdash was destroyed for that reason.
Right. The second for other reasons, but we see that they were very strong. Avodah zarah was very thin. So
Wow.
Agrippas went to Rome to talk to Caliglio. One of the things that he did was the first thing when he came to Eretz Yisrael, he donated that chain, that gold chain, to the Beis Hamikdash. He went to Rome to talk to Caliglio, but by the time he got to Rome, Caliglio was assassinated, and Claudius was put in as the next king. And he was also friends with the next king. The next king was even more friends with him, and he just said, you know what, since you're already here in Rome, the Shanda, you know what, you'll be king also over Yehuda. And when he came back to Yerushalayim, he decided to start fortifying the walls of Yerushalayim. And a lot of Romans were upset about that. So Claudius sent him a message to stop building, and he didn't listen. Now, afterwards, mysteriously, he died. So it's probably poison. He died at a very young age. Agrippas. So now he was very, very beloved by the Jews. Mainstream, and they say that now's the question, because in the Chazal there's a lot of stories about Agrippas Shepchu Chachamim. Which Agrippas was it? Now, if it was the first Agrippas, we understand very well. He had a son Agrippas, who later was a king for about 25 years.
The big street in Yerushalayim.
There was the second Agrippas actually ended up being on the side of the Romans in the time of the Churban. So I would have liked to say, and this is what I'm going to say soon, that the Agrippas in our Mishnah is the first Agrippas that people really liked a lot. The problem is that Rashi says, Hu Hashanechrev Abai is beyond.
Yeah.
So that has to be, according to Rashi, was the second Agrippas. Now, the art scroll I saw that they have a footnote on the bottom. He says, why does Rashi say Hu Hashanechrev Abai? He said, why does he say Hu Hashanechrev? Because he wants to say Imam Yisrael, and the earlier one was not Imam Yisrael. I don't know if that's the biggest thing, because I don't know if Rashi, when Rashi says Imam Yisrael, I'm not sure if Rashi means Mamish Imam Yisrael. It has to be that there's Jewish blood. The Kesef Mishnah says Imam Yisrael doesn't matter. Ovim Yisrael, Imam Yisrael, there's one of them is Yisrael. So according to historians, Aristobulus' mother was really Jewish. So the mother of Aristobulus was Jewish. So that could mean Imam Yisrael. But whatever, be it as it may, whatever art scroll said or didn't say is Nishnageya. Rashi writes that this Agrippas in our Mishnah is the one that Nechrav, which is the second. Again, all this in a few minutes is going to be all very, very, very relevant to the pilpul that we want to talk about. So, bottom line is, there is Hordus, Aristobulus, Agrippas number 1, Agrippas number 2. Agrippas number 1 seems to be very a wonderful person. Even though he grew up as a goy, he became good friends to Reb Gamliel HaZaken, and he took a lot of advice from Reb Gamliel HaZaken. He was very close to Reb Gamliel HaZaken and learned from him. And the second guy was not such a great guy, but as I said, it's very complex to know, because when the Churban of Beis Hamikdash happened, the Chazal was also not on the side of those that fought with the Romans. The Chazal said that we should not fight against the Romans. This was not the right time. As we know from the Gemara in Yoma, the story of Birchem Bazaka, the Gemara calls the rebellion against Rome Biryoinim. It's only right. It's only the revisionist today history in Israel that likes to idolize the Bar Kochva revolt and against those Yuklach, the passive Yuklach Masada, against those Yuklach Chachamim that wanted to be passive against the Romans. But the truth is that the Chachamim said that this was not the time to rebel. So the fact that the second Agrippas was not on the side of the rebellion is not so, but it's complicated, because in the history books it says that his sister, Agrippa's sister, wanted to marry Titus. So like what? She wanted to marry Titus. So she was maybe a bad one. He was a good one. Okay. I'm saying, I'm setting the stage now for what we're going to talk about. So now we have a few minutes, and the kids will review the issue. The Rebbe has a question. The Rebbe says that from the Mishnah it sounds like the story was a positive, and from the Gemara it sounds that the story was a negative. As I said, we see in the Radva as a raya to the Rebbe's idea, because the Radva says that from our Mishnah, the Rambam says like Rashi, that if Imam Yisrael, he's worthy to be a king. The Tosfos is going to say that no, Imam Yisrael is not good enough. There has to be Imam V'aviv Yisrael. And that's what Tosfos says. They both have to be Yisrael. The Rambam says, like Rashi, only Imam Yisrael is good enough. So the Radva says, how do you know that? From the Mishnah. Because you see that Chacham Shipchu Chacham, that said Achinu Ata, it's a positive. So we see that the way the Rebbe learns it, most Mefarshim don't learn this way. Most Mefarshim Befedish learn that the Gemara is just filling in some details for the Mishnah. But the Rebbe doesn't learn it that way. And you see that the Radvaz also learns it this way, like the Rebbe, that there's two stories. One in the Mishnah that was a positive, and one in the Gemara that was a negative. So the question is, why is it that one story with Agripas is a negative and one is a positive? What happened over here? What happened in the middle? How could one story be so good that it's like, and we can learn a lot from here. From here we learn that you don't have to have father and mother that should be Jewish. Again, Jewish means not gated. It means a blue blood, that straight, not without gators. But the question is, how is it that the Mishnah has the story as a positive and the Gemara has it as a negative? The Rebbe gave two answers and we spoke about four answers. The Rebbe's first answer was that there's a machloikis Rashi and Tosfos. Rashi and the Rambam hold that only the mother has to be Jewish. Tosfos holds the mother and the father has to be Jewish. So the first time the Sanhedrin sat, and they counted up the 70 Sanhedrin, and they paskin like Rashi and the Rambam. Mother is good enough. Oh, Agripas' mother is good, it's good enough.
So this is
So
now.
when they said Achinu Ata was good, 7 years later, the Bezdin was already new members in the Bezdin, and they voted, and they said, no, Tosfos is right. Even though Rashi and Tosfos didn't live yet at that time, but I mean, the machlokas of Rashi and Tosfos could have been among the Chacham at that time too. So that's what the Rebbe says. So therefore, the first story was a positive. At that time, the Chachamim had paskin like Rashi and the Rambam that Imam Yisrael is good enough. So he was a worthy for the crown. Second time around, 7 years later, they paskined that no, that has to be father and mother is Jewish. And they said Achinu Atos, that was a negative. That's one answer that Rebbe gives. Second
But
answer.
till today, we're going according to the mother. If the mother is Jewish, whoever.
We're not talking about Jewish and not Jewish. Again, if the father and mother are not Jewish, we're not talking to this guy. The thing is, after they converted, or they were avodim, and now they became bnei chodim, and therefore they become chayiv in the mitzvahs. The Torah says that a ger cannot be a king. Not only can't be a king, he can't have any authority in the Jewish community, even as a gabbai tzedakah. Cannot be even in charge in the Amas Hamayim. He can't be head of the water authority.
But it said, "Ki ger hayita be'eretz nochia."
Okay, that's when it comes to giving tzedakah. That comes when it comes to giving him a pastrami sandwich. But when it comes to putting someone in the position of authority, that it's not. Now the truth is, there's two stories in the Gemara. There's a story about Bad Barava that he was his host was in Pumpadisa, and he was running to be mayor of Pumpadisa. It was a Jewish city, so obviously it's like Lakewood, it's whoever the Olam decides to be the mayor. And Rabbi Ami said, "Oh, he can't be the mayor, but his father is a convert." Rabbi Barava came to Beis Medrash, and he said, "No, Imam Yisrael, but his mother is Jewish. That's good enough." So the Gemara says you should always be a good host for Talmid Chacham. You see. This guy became mayor of Pumpadisa because he hosted Rabbi Barava, and then he told Rabbi Barava his problem. Rabbi Barava. Okay, so pick a good Talmid Chacham to host in your house. So the Tosfos says, "Oh, that's good for regular leadership, but to be a melech, you need to be father and mother." So again, the first answer that Rebbe gives that the Bezdin, the 71 Tchavis Eden, they did a vote, and majority ruled. Like Rashi and Rambam, that the mother is Jewish is good enough. The 7 years later, they did a vote. They passed like Tosfos that no, father and mother have to be blue blood, and they can't be any gators involved. And therefore, The second story was a negative. Second answer that Rebbe gives that the first story there's machloikis in the Rishonim. If someone who's not a melech, could he read the parshas? So if we don't have a melech, we give the Rosh Hashiva to read. So some Rishonim say that even not a melech could read it, and some say no, only the melech reads it. So the first time the Bezdin vote, they said no, it could be anyone, even not a melech. Okay, so Agripas was kosher. Second time they voted, no, only a melech. So therefore the second time was not kosher. Problem with this answer is, but the Gemara seems to think that he was a melech. Okay. Again, the four answers that I gave. One answer I gave, that there was two Agripas. One seemed to be a great guy, and one seemed not such a great guy. Achinu could mean achinu b'Torah mitzvah. The Rambam says that you're an einim emanim l'chol minus rora ele Yiddish Shamayim. You cannot put a person, even a mayor in a city in Eretz Yisrael, he has to be a Yiddish Shamayim. First qualification. Doesn't matter what's his first name, his last name. If he wants to run for a position of leadership in Eretz Yisrael, he has to be a Yiddish Shamayim. So it says. So who's supposed to check? Is Mr. Lapida Yiddish Shamayim? His first credentials is that he has to be a Yiddish Shamayim.
Or the one
So-
mayor,
Just like Shechita.
the son of parish from the Knesset. He's the mayor of one of the places.
But as long as the person says he's Yoreh Shamayim. If the person says Befedish, if the guy says Elakim Ani Yoreh, so then it's good. But if the guy says the opposite, then he can't, he's not fit for office. Not fit for office. If a guy says he doesn't have Yiddish Shamayim,
Israel will listen to that.
the first qualification that Rambam says is that he has to be Yoreh Shamayim. So if a guy claims he's Yoreh Shamayim, really is not, so it's complicated. So go no. But if the guy declares in public that he's not a Yoreh Shamayim, is that so? Anyway, so I said that maybe the first Agripas was Yoreh Shamayim. So Achinu was true. Second guy was not Yoreh Shamayim. So Achinu was not true. So why I now want to upschlug it? Why I want to upschlug it? Because Rashi says that the Agripas in our Mishnah is the second Agripas. Hu Hashenachra v'abayis b'yomav. So if my answer is right, but that's against Rashi. Rashi says that the story in our Mishnah happened with a melech hu Hashenachra beis hamikdash b'yomav. I'm trying to say that the story of the Mishnah was the first Agripas, and the story in the Gemara was the second Agripas. But it's against Rashi. Rashi says hu Hashenachra beis hamikdash b'yomav. What's the difference? Why Rashi said so? But that's what Rashi says. Okay, so and maybe our school is right that Rashi holds that Imam Yisrael means that Mamash's mother has to be Yisrael, and the first Agripas' mother was not Yisrael. His mother, the wife of Aristobulus, was a granddaughter of the sister of Hurdus. So they were Gadim. So it's not even Yisrael. So Adarab could be Taka. The art school is right in their word.
Rabbi Lehavdil, when Obama became here
President.
in America,
There was a whole question: is he born?
question if
Was
he
he really-
was born here or not,
Right.
his mother American or not, he was
Yeah.
slave. Remember, it was a big thing.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
have to deny it, they have to give proof. They have to-
So this is the upshlag to my first edit. Again, I was a little bit kitzer then, we didn't have time. Now also already we ran out of time, but that's my first upshlag.
Rabbi, speaking about a ger, are they permitted to own land in Israel?
They're permitted to have everything. The only one thing is they can't have position of leadership.
Okay.
Let's say before Rosh Hashanah, when you do a Teres Nadarim,
Yeah,
or is he allowed to?
can do everything. Can do everything.
Okay, but isn't that
He's
a
like that
position
too.
of power? He's like a judge in that sense.
If you could be part of that bezin, he can't be on Sanhedrin. He could be part of that bezin. It's a good question. Good pause on this. This is the shaila. What's if his mother and father are not Jewish? That's his question. It's several passing like that. So that's his question.
Till today, the Syrian community is against Gerim, like 100
Right.
years ago. Why they did it? Because a lot of
I know why they did.
non-Jews wanted to marry the Syrian to get the green card or something. So they said no Gerim.
I know why they did it. Because I get a call. This guy thinks that I forget or that I don't talk to my wife. So he's Syrian Jew, and he wants to marry a shiksa. So the only thing is that he wants I guess he has fault of conscience, and so he knows that in his community they're not going to be regarded this
They
woman,
do keren.
right?
Yeah.
So I guess he doesn't mind about the khed. He wants that I should be involved in the gators. So first he called my wife, first he called me. So I told him where to go. Then he called my wife, and then he waited a few months to call me, like he thinks that I forget. I don't know. Why would I forget such a thing? I told him he used to go talk to his rabbi. No, he says no, but by us they don't do gerut. So that's probably a good reason for it.
You go to the shul, any Syrian shul, they have a big sign, and every year all the rabbis from the community, which shul they have to sign that they're still agreeing to them.
Wow. Okay, let me go quickly. The second answer that I gave is that the Gemara has a machlokes if you're allowed to chamfin or not. So it could be the first time the Bezdin voted that you're allowed to chamfin the Rishonim, and the second time they said you're not allowed to chamfin the Rishonim. The only problem with my answer is what the Sefer Yereim. In the Sefer Yereim it sounds that you're not allowed, even the opinion that says that you're allowed to. It's only a person who is a Rasha, and it's Pachad. So the Be'er Sheva says, and also Ben Yoda says the same thing. They ask, why was L'chayra, they were scared of him? So they said, no, he was a Melech Kosher, Rashi says. He was Melech Kosher, he was a good guy. So if he was a Rasha, and he might kill, and Nochmer, the Ben Yoda says, Adiuk, they said, Al Tesiore Agripas, Achinoata. Why did they have to say Al Tesiore Agripas? Because if it had been Hurdus, they could say 100 times Achinu Ata. They could say Rosh Hashiva Ata. They could say Rebbe Ata. They could call him Ademoyer. They could call him Ga'ana Goyim or Rosh Kalagoyla. This guy is a dangerous guy. It's part of the Beis HaShchita. You're allowed to come for him. But because Agripas, it's like on its head. Because Agripas was a good guy, so who asked you to come for him? If he was a Hurdus, oh, no way, Herod. Who? You Herod? You have to tell Herod he's a Rosh Hashiva, he's a Rebbe, he's a Tzaddik, he's a God. Like Putin, exactly. What does Rabbi Lazar tell Putin? Du bist a Tzaddik, du bist a Rebbe, du bist a God. How do I write a kvittel to you? Which hand should I give it into? Ge'endik. There's no questions what you're supposed to do when you deal with Hurdus or with Putin. But since this guy is up to Ben Yod, his name is Agripas, and Agripas is not a bad guy, so you were not in danger. He wouldn't kill you. He wouldn't break your windows. He wouldn't do anything bad to you. So why ask the confident? So then if we learn like those maforshim, so my answer is not a good answer. Again, what was my answer is that there's a machlokes if you're allowed to chamfin, not allowed to chamfin. The first time they said you're allowed to, the second time, but they're learning that even the opinion says you're allowed to chamfin is only if you feel you're going to be in danger, and that's why it's mashma from the Yereim. Only if you feel you're going to be in danger, and over here there was no danger, so therefore it slugs up my second teretz. My third teretz was that the question was maybe the Gamliel himself was considered a melech. Maybe Gamliel was considered a melech because at that time there wasn't maybe a legitimate melech. And Rebbe Gamliel was definitely there. Maybe he's considered a melech. So Shaila is if the melech is, how could you do it when the melech is here? I think it's a shvacha teretz. It's hard to imagine if Gamliel Taka was a descendant from Hillel, who was a descendant of the melech. Everything is very nice. It's hard to imagine he has a din of a melech. No one was makabelim as a melech. I mean, Moshe Rabbeinu Taka had a din of a Hebrew shur melech. And maybe Yeshua had a din of a melech, but it's hard to imagine that Gamliel is not going to din of a melech. My fourth teretz actually still remains. My fourth teretz was that the Marsha says that the whole problem is once you appointed him, but once he's appointed, you don't have to take him down from the throne. And once he appointed him, you don't have to take down to the throne. Similar to that is Chasam Sofer. Chasam Sofer says that Shlomo's son also, his mother was a convert. Because Rechavam, his mother was the daughter of the king of Ammon. So the truth is, the Kesef Mishnah holds doesn't matter as long as one of them, the father and mother, is good enough. But some hold no, it has to Imam Yisrael to be Dafka, and his mother was a convert. So he says, when you appoint a king, father and mother has to be, or the mother has to be Jewish. Once he's appointed, he gives over the Yerusha to his son. Similar. Shlomo Melech was appointed. Now his son Yerechavam, Shlomo Melech was appointed. David Melech appointed him. David Melech appointed him. Shlomo. So now it goes Yerusha to Shlomo's son. So, and the Mashal says even more than that. That once you appoint the Melech, there's already no.
Chavam was very bad.
Chavam was not a good guy, right? But he had a din of a Melech. He was not a good guy.
Melech's wife was probably
Who?
His wife was probably already a Malka before they were married, right?
Who?
Some royal marriage.
Well, who cares? The main thing is the Shlomo Melech's wife that mothered Rechavam. Shlomo married the daughter of the king of Ammon and converted her to Judaism.
Shlomo married a lot of people.
So, but the Rechavam's mother was a convert.
Yeah.
So
He
that's
was one of the 1,000.
yeah. So that's it. So that's it. So basically, I would say that the first time the Bezdin sat and they voted, if he was already a king, do you have to throw him down from the throne? They said no, you can keep him. Second time they voted, and they said if he's already a king, you have to take him down the throne. They said yeah, you have to take him down the throne. So now they were not allowed to say Achinuato. Okay.
That's when he went to the Romans again?
Yeah, I mean, he seemed to have gone to the Romans at the end. Again, we don't know in that time. Could be he didn't mean any bad. Could be. I mean, Chazal also went against it, but still, Chazal went out on the side of the Romans. Chazal said that we shouldn't fight, but once they didn't fight,
Who is the son that David is son of David? Yeah. And when he got killed, David said, "Mi ten moti tachtecha." I want to die instead of you. So Shalom,
Shalom, yeah. Shalom. Okay, David should help in the schus of our doing the Kinus Torah today and the schus that connecting to Hakel, that we should have Hakel Anoshim Oma Anoshim Ataf Bevis Mashiach Tzedkenu.
Hotel.
You want the Agrippa Hotel?
And they have a plaque, but which Agrippa?
So yeah, exactly. Which Agrippa is it?
Oh, you really want to do it?
Bye-bye.
Enjoy, Shkach for joining us.
Seid gesund, ich kann